Hey there, everybody. It is Leah Piper, your Tantra expert here at SxR.
Yeah, and I'm Dr. Willow Brown, your Taoist sexology expert. And we are so excited today to dive in with you on some of the reasons why relationships get into trouble.
That's right. It can get toxic, people. Have you ever found yourself in an unhealthy relationship?
Raise your hand. Oh, yes.
And I'm curious. Yes, raise your hand, give a holler.
All hands raised out in the audience, I'm sure. We've all been there. And there's no shame in it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's how we learn, it's how we evolve, it's how we grow. And if we take these challenges that we're going to talk about, the top 6 today, and if we do take these challenges, and really learn from them and grow from them, then we're going to move into our next relationship with so much more wisdom.
Yeah, so we want you to really reflect as we go through these 6 categories. Does this remind you of your own experience? Is it familiar to you because of a parental experience or a relationship with a lover you've had, maybe even a best friend? These types of relationship saboteurs can happen in multiple kinds of relationship. And here at Sex Reimagine, we want to start shaking that up and make things as healthy as possible. And that's going to be useful when creating some boundaries. So you know what to do. It's time to
tune in, turn on, and fall in love with Sex Reimagined.
Welcome to the Sex Reimagined podcast, where sex is shame-free and pleasure-forward. Let's get into the show.
We're so excited to drop in with you today about how you can move into a more healthy, united, and connected relationship by letting go of these top 6 saboteurs that we see in relationships all the time. We help couples and have been for years, and these things come up regularly. So you're probably going to feel like they're very familiar to you, and you're going to want to know how to get over them. So we're excited you're here with us.
Yeah, and as we go through them, you may not have experienced all of these in one relationship. Maybe you just experienced one, or maybe you've seen a friend be in a relationship that everyone wishes they would just break up, one of those. Well, have you had a friend like that where it's like, God,
yes.
would they just break up? They're so
Oh, yes. And the years
together.
go by, and it's painful. I mean, I was one of those people,
Really?
Oh, yeah. Where, when I got deep with my girlfriends, they'd be like, why are you staying?
Wow.
And, I would say it can be so tricky because in that particular relationship, I would call it a successful relationship. It was good 80% of the time. But 80%, as it turns out, is not enough for me. And that's the real measure, And so if somebody is in something that's 80% good 80% of the time, and that is good enough, and that is right for them, then you're not going to hear about all these kind of saboteurs because they're not going to bother them the same way.
Yeah. Yeah, one that is so hard on the self-esteem is belittling.
Oh, yeah.
And I think one of the ways, I think it's a more mild form of belittling, but it kind of hits the same ouch in the hurt sensitivity zone, is when someone makes a joke. They're basically making fun of you, and they get to say what they really want to say, but without being accountable to saying it.
Oh,
If
for
they can
sure.
dress it up in a joke, then
It's a little backhanded,
yeah,
smack in the face. And
it's very passive aggressive.
Very passive aggressive. And what's the word? It's very like when someone makes a joke, but it's like
It's
underneath.
a dig.
It's a
Yeah.
dig. There's a word I'm trying to think of. Can't think of it. But anyway, I watched my parents do this quite a bit, actually. Yeah.
Oh, really?
So that, your first relationship is your parents' relationship. And so I got to see a lot of this firsthand. And, I don't know where belittling comes from. I would say definitely jealousy, possessiveness, envy, that kind of thing comes from a lack of confidence. I feel like belittling comes more from not being really proud to be with that person, or really not valuing that person.
Yeah. It's also can be like a power over. It's like you're chipping away at someone. You're keeping them small. There's a thing that gets perpetuated, which is like, you're unworthy. You're not good enough. you're a loser, you're an idiot. It's like an attitude. It can also be like with the way that they can be very critical,
Mhm.
especially around somebody's looks or their
Yes.
intelligence. I feel like
Yes.
that's where belittling gets really ugly and is most commonly directed towards
Yes.
appearance and intelligence.
Yes, and it's so mean. It's so
Yeah,
unnecessarily
it's really
mean. And
ugly.
if it's towards looks toward a vulva owner, that's going to be really detrimental on her self-esteem. So of course then she's not going to rise up to like be this bright shining star next to you, you know? And if it's toward a man, that could be equally detrimental to his confidence. But
Yeah,
I definitely think more toward women since there's such a such an appearance heavy culture that we're living in.
yeah, and there's sort of like an intensity, right? Like it starts with saying you're so lazy, and then it goes to you're such a slob.
Right.
It's like there's this gradation of like it gets uglier and uglier,
Yeah.
and then they'll some people will do it only in private, or
Yes.
they'll do it only in front of other people.
Well, it was interesting when I was growing up, there was always this emphasis on weight. That was where the belittling was happening was my dad to my mom around weight issues. And so
Mm-hmm.
we discovered later on, I was in my early 20s. I'd been living away from home and I was having dinner with them in Monterey and he was doing it, and I'd already written him letters about this, like, I'd gone through anorexia and all these things because of that growing up, right?
Mm.
And so I'd written my dad letters and told him all this stuff, like, "You really need to stop doing that, it's totally fucked up," and so he did stop doing it, but there we were at dinner, and he was doing it, and I was like, "I told you, already like, we've already talked about this," and my mom kept saying, like, "He doesn't really do this anymore, it's weird that he's
Oh,
doing this right now in front of
oh,
you."
wow.
Yeah.
And so, what was the takeaway for the family regarding that observation?
Just fucking more consciousness, like
Yeah.
let's be more aware and more conscious about why are you doing it? Because he grew up with in a family and with a mom who like fitness was really important. This is my yoga grandma, the one who taught me yoga and
Yeah, and when
wrote
she wrote
cookbooks and
cookbooks,
yeah,
yeah,
and she was all about health consciousness, but not really for health's sake. I mean, that was a piece of it, but more
that's
for like
right.
look's sake. Southern California.
Right.
So there was more of a outer layer thing going on.
I think that really points to and what I want people to take away from this show is look, we're pointing out bad behavior
Mhm.
and how we correct that behavior has lots of forms, and that should really be left up to trained psychotherapists who have a lot more experience with this. But what that points to for me is the awareness of like the wound keeps forward. It
Yes.
travels with
It
us.
perpetuates.
So
Yes.
we get to experience something that is not love,
Mhm.
and it gets repeated. And so then we
Mhm.
do that thing, and consciously, unconsciously, it leaks out.
Yeah.
Um, and so we can have compassion down the line, and we can understand. And the way to get to compassion, in my experience,
Yeah.
is you can't just jump to it. You have to go, how did we get here?
Right.
And when we realize that the person who's perpetrating the bad behavior has also been the victim,
Hurt people
honestly,
hurt people.
you have a long lasting impact. One word can have an impact on someone's entire life
Absolutely.
from a moment of unconscious bitterness.
Yeah, and if you are being belittled within the relationship, take responsibility for that and say, "Hey, that's not very nice. Hey, that hurts my feelings. Hey, I'm asking you to stop doing that. Hey, this is a boundary for me, and it is a requirement that you stop doing that because if you don't, at some point, it is going to be the undoing of this relationship.
You
It's not a
know,
request."
it's reminding me of that recent interview we did with the emotion codes, which is a great question could be before you get to the boundary place is what's happening for you
Yeah, the
when you say
connection
that to
codes.
me?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's
Say those
happening for
mean
you when you
things.
say that? When you say that to me?
Yeah, get
What are you
curious.
after?
Love that.
Yeah. Okay, so you know where else I think belittling kind of slips into the dynamic is when we emasculate or objectify
Oh, for
others.
sure. You're not doing enough. You're not this enough. You're not that enough. It's Why? Why would we do that? Let's lift each other up. That's what partnership's all about. We want to really help them step into their greatness more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I had a partner one time, it was like a bull in a china shop, just like everywhere we went, just like knocking into shit constantly. It was just like, at first I was like, okay, I had a lot of patience for it, you know, and then after years, I was like,
it's like,
it was annoying.
yeah,
It was like, I had to bite my tongue to not,
yeah,
criticize,
you're right.
but I
Right.
did. I bit my tongue. So that's
Yeah.
sometimes what you have to do. If somebody has an annoying habit or they're annoying in some way, I mean, we all have annoying things that we bring into relationships. And
Yeah, I mean, I think where I see people belittling themselves,
yeah.
because I think where belittling happens a lot is to ourselves more
Oh,
so than
yeah.
to other people. And
Usually no one's gonna be meaner to you than you.
yeah. And food tends to be like this common area where people think if I shame myself or I'm super critical about certain foods that I like, then it'll somehow make me more disciplined. If
Right.
I can be as mean as possible to myself, that
Yeah.
somehow it will help me control my um, indulgent ways of being. I see my husband do this a lot, and I'm like, you can't do this to me. Shame yourself all you want, but I will not allow you to shame me or me shame myself around food issues. Like,
Yes.
that's a really dangerous
It's a big
territory for
boundary
me.
for you, yeah.
I have lived with it for so long, it doesn't work. It is a false promise.
Yeah.
So, belittle in your own head. Do not belittle out loud. But ideally, don't belittle at all because
Right.
honestly, this food thing, like trying to make food bad, it does not work. They've even studied it. It
Yep.
doesn't work. It's
No,
not a viable
it's
solution.
not good for anyone. It causes food anxiety, it causes indigestion, it causes all the things that you're trying not to have happen when it's just a pigeonhole. You
Yeah.
really stay
If you
away.
really want something, but you know you shouldn't eat it, then just say, I know I can have that, but I'm not going to have it right now.
Yeah, it's just a choice you make in
Yeah,
every moment.
I'll have it some other time. Okay,
That's right.
moving on.
Yes.
Let's go to jealousy and possessiveness.
Okay, yes. Big one. Big, big, big. Now, I have a history, anymore, but a history of attracting jealous partners. And I myself have never really experienced too much jealousy until a little bit in the last year or so. And God, it's an uncomfortable emotion.
It's the
It feels
pits.
horrible.
Yeah.
I feel so bad. I mean, now that I've felt it more deeply in the last year, I have so much more compassion for my partners who are feeling it. But yeah, it was definitely, it turned into control things like, like why are you going to spend time with that guy friend? And oh, now you have a new guy friend. It's just there was a lot of that kind of stuff going on. I'm like, I'm allowed to have friends with penises. It's like not a big deal. Like
Yeah.
they're just people. But I think this jealousy thing really, really stems from just a lack of feeling secure within self and the relationship. Usually, there's some kind of insecurity within yourself. And then if there's a reason to be insecure, like if your partner is, out there flirting relentlessly with everyone, then yeah, you might have a reason to feel jealous. And then that's a deeper conversation to have. But if there's a lack of security inside of you, and what I've noticed is that, like with clients and stuff, is that this lack of security can come from not feeling secure within the relationship, but also not feeling secure financially in life, not feeling secure in home, not feeling secure with family stuff. So there, or health stuff. So some of these
Right.
big major
Not feeling
sectors.
secure in their desirability.
Yes. Yes. So
Yeah.
there's different sectors of life that can feed into this not feeling secure, which will bloom into jealousy.
Yeah. I see it too, like if the person doesn't trust themselves and
Yeah.
has cheated and has been one of those people that hasn't been able to remain in integrity to their word and with agreements within relationship, they have a way of projecting that onto their partners. And they don't trust anyone because they know they're not trustworthy.
Right.
So that can be a real vicious cycle and be so painful.
Oh,
I also see jealousy arise when there was a parent that cheated on the
mhm.
other parent
Mhm.
consistently, and it was always a disruptor in the family home, and there was someone always grieving and feeling betrayed. I
Yeah.
think that adds to a lot of jealous instincts And then there's when something ain't right. Something is off. And you look like the jealous one, but it's because you have a fifth sense that knows when there are lies in the field. And, a good liar tells a lie with some truth in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you've got lies and lies and lies packed into these packages where there's truth, where you cannot refute it 100%, or you don't have all the pieces to show the sin, so to speak, then you're feeling crazy. And a lot of people take advantage of that and will gaslight that person and make them feel like they're crazy for thinking that way, when really there's probably something, not an integrity happening that person's picking up on. That can be a unique case where someone feels jealous, and they probably have a reason to.
Yeah.
But then you just have the possessive, jealous
Yeah.
monster that comes out and
Ooh.
is so controlling.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So what's the antidote then to jealousy and possessiveness? What's
Well,
our
I can
antidote?
say that I think it really helps to realize that with a lot of jealousy, it's really just the fear of being left out. We all
For
just want to be
sure.
invited. We want to be
Yeah,
included. And it
totally.
stems from being little kids. Kids are cruel, by the way. Like, people think
So
babies
mean.
and kids are
Yeah.
so cute, but they're really mean.
They can be.
And I think this is where some of these jealous wounds and some of these negative things that we're talking
Well, and
about today
also
actually
we
stem
can
from.
isolate ourselves from groups. I mean, I think I kind of grew up doing that, like, oh, how come I'm not included? Because I'm not including myself. I'm not
Right.
stepping up and just being a part of the team, whatever.
Yes.
So,
That's
but
actually
then,
you're right. That's a cure to jealousy a lot of the time is don't wait for
yes,
someone to include you. You include yourself. You
include
make yourself a
yourself.
part of it.
Yeah.
That gives you the control back. That gives you the power back. That way
Mhm.
you're not just sitting there waiting for someone to care enough.
Yeah.
Everyone's just obsessed with themselves.
Yeah, so true. Okay, so let's talk betrayal because that goes right hand in hand
Yeah.
with jealousy and possessiveness. And I've been really fortunate myself to have never been cheated on and to have never cheated in any real big way. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
kisses here and there, but
Yeah.
that doesn't bother me too much. So,
Yeah. Me too, actually. I think because my parents, had broke up pretty much over an affair of, although I think that was just the catalyst. I think the things
mm,
that drew the line in the sand were not the affair. I think the affair was forgivable. But when I look at the big picture, um, there was definitely a betrayal there. There was a lot of betrayal. Betrayal was the root. The things
mhm,
that happened, I don't know.
mhm.
Betrayal's tricky. I don't have a deep experience of betrayal in my own life so much. I've watched betrayal hurt others.
I did feel it recently and more than I ever had before. And, it was like, it's like when somebody says they're going to do something or they're going to show up in a certain way and they're so present with you and they're speaking it so deeply. And you're like, okay, you're going to show up in this way. You're going to
I
be
can count
there
on you.
in this way. All right, you got this. I got this. We're going to do this. And then they just skate. They're just gone. They just completely do not follow through on that at all. It doesn't always have to be overt. I cheated on someone,
Right. No, that's a really good point. I think where I have felt betrayed, now that you added that distinction, the door just opened up for me. And broken promises feel
Yeah.
like betrayal.
Yeah. Not a
When
good feeling.
Yeah, I've had that happen a couple times in business where it was like this was promised, and
Right.
then 15 years later it was pulled away, and
Mhm.
that felt like a big betrayal.
Mhm.
I think also when someone tells your secrets, that feels like a
Yeah.
really big betrayal.
I'm quite bad at that, y'all. So don't tell me your secrets. I I
You
don't
preface
care
telling
if
secrets with
yeah.
"Put it in the
This
vault."
is the
Okay, this
secret.
is for
Yeah,
the
yeah,
vault.
yeah. You
Yeah.
got it. Really got to do that with certain people because
Yeah.
they might not value secrets. I don't care if everyone reads my open book, so it's not
Right.
a huge value for me. But I think that one of the places where like actual overt betrayal, where someone cheats on the other person, it's almost like it's yes, I don't trust you anymore. And what are you going to do to earn my trust back? But also, I don't know if I trust myself with you anymore because I thought where we were at and where we were going was, what I thought it was, and it's not. So I don't know if I can trust my own thoughts. I think
Right.
that's
Or my
probably
own
one of
judgment. Like, is my
yeah,
judgment not accurate?
yeah,
What other mistakes am I making? If I can't
totally.
trust you, who else is betraying me?
Yes.
And will I be able to pick something better for myself later? I
Right.
think a lot of people go through a lot of self-doubt in those moments.
Yeah, it's really betrayal can really, really shake your sense of faith and your sense of trust. And if it wasn't strong to begin with, it can be a hard climb up the mountain to trusting yourself again. And I would say, the antidote and one of the things that you can do to really regroup and come back to center and come back to your sense of faith and trust is pray, whatever that looks like for you. It could be meditation or it could be, painting rocks as Leah likes to do. It could be
It's a little bit of escapism.
swimming. It could be whatever your like prayer or your meditation is, your connection to spirit. That's what you want to do is you want to build that connection to spirit. Actually, just last night I was at a show and I was talking with my girlfriend and she was like, because I'm in this new relationship, and she was like, well, do you trust him? I was like, oh my God, I'm just going head over heels here. And she's like, well, do you trust him? And I was like, yes, I do trust him. But then I was like, here's what I trust. Here's what I really trust. I trust that I'm not going to go through that same betrayal that knocked me on my ass over the winter again. Like I trust the universe isn't going to put me through that again. So I don't know how much I trust him and I trust myself with him because of that deep betrayal that I'm still climbing my way out of. But I do trust the universe. And so the things that get me back into that connection with spirit are the things that make me trust myself and him more and more and more.
Yeah, and I think when you're looking at betrayal from someone else, it's a call for pruning in your life. A plant does so much better when you prune the little dead leaves or the little flowers that are dead, that are just drooping and draining energy from that plant. And so if you can do some pruning, it just helps everything come back to life. And then you have to realize this isn't about you, it's about them. And even if they betrayed you, it's probably not personal either.
Right.
It's their shit. And so I
Totally.
think when we're the center of our universe, we tend to think that it's always all about us.
For sure.
When studies have shown that for a lot of infidelity, the ultimate betrayal, some people would say, it's the person who's doing the cheating. It's not so much that they want to cheat on their lover. It's
Right.
that there's another lover that's helping them
Find a
feel
piece
this
of themselves.
lost part inside
Yeah.
of them. It's irresistible to feel that part of them come alive again.
Yeah.
And if we can understand it, then I think some of the grief is like, okay, this isn't because I'm not attractive anymore. I'm not
Yeah.
interesting anymore. You're not in love with me anymore.
Right.
It's that you just found a part of yourself. And
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
let's come back home
Uh-huh.
and see what's left as a result of that choice you made.
Yeah.
But
So
it's
to-
not because you aren't good enough.
Yeah. So to kind of separate your persona from the actual experience of betrayal and just kind of, it's just something that happened. And what are you learning from it? And what are they learning from it?
I mean, probably if told to me at the wrong time, I'd want to punch somebody. But maybe it's the right time for someone out there to hear it. And that is, well, I got a couple funny sayings. One is, it's not happening to you, it's happening for you.
Yes.
And so if there's a betrayal happening that has been uncovered, how is this happening for you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, how is this going to open the door to other realms that are going to make you happier? The other one I always love is, a man's rejection is God's protection, honey.
Well, I love it when you say it with that Southern accent.
Well, thank you. Thank you. A woman's rejection is
A man's
God's protection,
God's
brother.
protection.
And I really actually believe that if someone has betrayed you, it's because it's like, hey, here's a big warning that goes, this is not,
Isn't
you're
working.
worthy of being surrounded with people who are of a higher loving vibration, and you got to trim the fat,
Yeah. Sometimes you
as
do.
we say in the kitchen.
Let's move on. Deflecting responsibility. This is like,
Oh, this is a big one.
Yeah, there's so many layers to this because there's like not taking emotional responsibility, and then there's not taking responsibility for, tasks that like household
Mhm.
things.
Right?
There's not taking responsibility for financial things. There's so many
There's
layers.
deflecting conversations and,
Ah,
you
yes,
know,
deflecting.
it's a big one. I
It's
find
like
it,
being ignored. It's a little rude.
I know people somehow are raised with this idea that, like, they refuse to say they're sorry, as if, like, I'm sorry is such a big fucking deal in their world.
I
Um,
was raised to say I'm sorry. That was the thing. My parents were like, "You need to say you're sorry."
and I'm a big believer in I'm sorry,
Yeah.
and Matt was like, don't just say you're sorry just to say you're sorry. Like, if you say you're sorry, that's a promise you're never gonna do it again. I'm like, "No, it's
Right.
not. It is
Right.
I take responsibility for this, regrettable experience and exchange between the two of us, but it is not a promise to be perfect, and, I'm pretty sure I'll be saying sorry in a couple
Again.
days."
Yeah.
And I do know that people are, like, really don't like people just throwing away the word "I'm sorry," because then it's like, "Are you really?"
Yeah.
Your actions speak louder than words, so there's some place in the
Yeah.
middle
Yeah.
that you have to be congruent with. You can't
Right.
just go, "I'm
I'm
sorry,"
sorry.
and then never
Yeah.
change.
No, it's true.
But,
Let's talk about deflecting emotional responsibility. Can you think
oh,
of an example?
well, I think you can kind of bring it back to the love languages a little bit, and in particular with people whose love language is gifts. If your love language is gifts, and that's a way that really opens your heart, is when people are thoughtful or they remember or they do these little gestures that kind of show, like, hey, I'm really thinking of you, and I was really thinking of you specifically. When you're the type of person who doesn't value gifts, then you're likely to forget big deals like birthdays and anniversaries and some holidays, and so I think there's a lack of emotional responsibility in that. It's like you
Mm.
are in partnership with someone who gets great joy in thinking about what to give someone else that would bring joy to their day, or that would soften their heart, or that would just brighten their day in some form or fashion, and that is something that they, what's the word, bask in. And if you can't explore what that's like for your partner, you're really missing out.
Hmm.
And so to develop a certain kind of emotional thread between you and your lover, to get curious, to go, what happens for you when you get this from me? When I remember to make reservations, what's that like for you? I think that's a piece regarding emotional responsibility that really matters in partnership, if
Mm.
that's of value to your
If that's a
partner.
value. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How about
I
for you?
always think of too, like when you're maybe you've had a discord with your partner, and they're and you're coming to them and you're like, "Hey, I want to talk about this issue that we just keep having over and over again, and I want to take responsibility for my part in it, and here's where I think your part is in it,
That's where
right?"
it gets a little tricky. Yeah.
And then they can be like, "No, that's not my part in it." I don't do that. I don't, and it's sometimes it can be just
Yes.
a wall, a fucking wall that just
Yeah.
doesn't go away for years.
Yeah. And I
Can be
think
really
that that's
frustrating.
there's that part of, like, deflecting responsibility where it's like you've created together an upset. And it takes two to play in
Yeah.
that, and to
Yeah.
think that it's always someone else's fault.
Yeah.
One of the things I loved in my relationship with Charles is, with every disruption, or regrettable moment, as the Gottmans like to say, he would say, "I'm sorry for my part, and I forgive you
Mhm.
for yours."
That's
And
very simple and clear. I like
very
that.
simple and clear. It's like, "Hey,
Yeah.
I'm sorry for the part I played in this,
And I
and I'm
forgive you for
already
you.
gonna forgive you for your part."
I love that. That's
And
great.
so I think just like a commitment to that, a commitment to go. And I think this is like such a relationship gold mine, is when you can take a pause and
Mhm.
your partner is mad at you for you doing something. to just, instead of going immediately to deflecting responsibility, to just sit with it and ask yourself, can I find it?
Yeah.
Can I find where they're right? And they may not be right for that instance that they're bugging you about, but you can probably find it where you've done it before.
Yeah.
And so if you can just find it, it kills the fight right there. When I just say, you know what? I can find it.
Mm-hmm.
I can find it. That sucks.
Yeah. Totally.
And then there's nothing to fight with.
It softens everything. Could you feel that just now, everyone? It was like everything just softened when she said that. I was like, oh, yeah, okay. There's more openness. There's more receptivity available. It's like, okay, now we can actually move forward. Yeah. The wall has just been removed between us. Now we can actually connect. And, and sometimes you do need to pause at that point and just like let it be, let that pause and that moment of the wall being gone be there for a second before you keep talking about it. Because sometimes you're like, okay, good, we removed the wall. Let's keep moving forward. And it turns into another argument.
Right. Or it's like, yeah, I can find it. But you know what else I can find?
Totally.
I can find how you.
Yeah, I think this is really, really where nonviolent communication comes in super, super handy, where you are taking responsibility by using particular languages, particular words to communicate, my part in this is, and I'm sorry for my and really taking ownership.
It's also amazing to watch someone just go on this rampage of denial. Mm-hmm. It's like, I did not do. And it's like, okay, you did because you're drunk.
Yeah, totally.
You got lipstick on your collar. We can smell the perfume. Like, you are clearly like, at some point, no one's believing your story.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, deflecting responsibility. What about volatility?
Oh, you want to do volatility? We'll do volatility and guilting. Those are the last two. So far, to recap, we've done belittling, we've done jealousy and possessiveness. Those go hand in hand. We did betrayal, which is also very much tied in, deflecting responsibility. And we're going to do two more, volatility and guilting.
Yeah, so volatility, I have lived with this in my life a lot. I mean, I think I grew up with a dad who was really volatile. I had grandparents who were really volatile.
Mm.
And
what did that do to your nervous system?
It was scary.
It was
scary. It was big. It was loud. It felt dangerous. It was a lot of like duck and cover kind of fear vibes.
So you felt like you had to protect yourself a lot.
I felt like I had to get small and get little right away. Don't be the object of the upset, if at all possible. And then there came a point where it was like, fuck that. I'm going to match it. And then it became a challenge. It was like, you're not going to fucking bully me. And you're not going to bully anyone else in here. I will go after your ass. Like, I'll take the beating.
How old were you when that switched over? How old
I got my head wagging back and forth. Woo! See, I'm dropping shit here in the room. I start getting heated up. And that's probably why I can be volatile, is because there was something that in the fight, flight, or freeze thing, when I got big enough, I'd still get my ass kicked, but I got big enough where I didn't have to freeze anymore. And then the energy, the rage, there was a suppressed rage of having to be so kind of controlled and suppressed and trying to make everybody happy. When I saw that after like 10 years that wasn't working, that I decided to join them. And
so at what point did that shift for you?
Which part?
Like where you were like, I'll stay small versus like, no, I'm going to step up and match
I think I was probably more of a teenager, probably around 15 and 16.
Mm-hmm.
I think I just got...
Yeah,
and I was ready to push back on the patriarchy. I just had like that teenage angst where I wasn't going to take it anymore. And I was going to exert my independence.
Well, the teen years really are the biggest metamorphosis that we go through. So that's a great time to make the switch. I think a lot of people make the switch on how they keep themselves safe at that point.
Yeah. And I don't know if our pattern strategy episode will be released before this is, but it really, I think, is another place where I developed the comp merger persona, because I went from make everybody happy to no, that's not working. I'm going to be aggressive
Yeah. Right.
because that's the only way to get safe here.
Right.
And so then I really took that on for a spin, and now it's easy for me to, when I feel really righteous, because it was
Yeah.
also very connected to the feeling of righteousness.
Yeah.
If I feel overly righteous about something, I can easily slip into that aggressive, big, volatile, everybody duck and cover, because Leah
Yeah.
can't contain the
Yeah.
energy that's starting to crackle.
Yeah. I think
I always call it intensity. I
yeah.
hope it's not volatility.
Right. Well, I mean, that's a good distinction too. I think
Mhm.
that's just different ends of the spectrum, But
Yeah.
I do definitely see in my clientele, in my own family dynamic, in relationships and friends, when volatility is present, because it wasn't huge in my upbringing, but I see it in life now. And when it does come up, it throws people right into their protective pattern faster than anything.
Yeah, it sure does. Oh my God. It's
It's
like,
crazy.
how
It's
can it not?
immediate.
Because volatility is
Yeah.
related to violence.
Yes.
And so,
Boom,
I
you're
mean,
not safe.
no, you're totally in survival mode.
Protection. Yeah.
Everyone, yeah,
I can think of some
it's
times.
dangerous.
Yep. I can think of some moments when volatility would arise as I was a child, and I would definitely go into pattern. I would want to leave, and I would leave, I would
Yeah.
flee. So, what an interesting thing. And I think if you are someone who knows that they are bringing volatility forward in a relationship, there's some really deep work there for you. There's some
Yeah.
really powerful medicine in that. Why are you doing that? What's underneath it? Is it part of your upbringing? And that's what is exemplified to you. And how do you want to go about healing that? I would say plant medicine work for that kind of, that's some deep,
Yes.
deep work right there.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would also second that recommendation. I think also, like, this thing about volatility, how can you make distinctions of, are you in relationship with someone who's
Yes.
volatile versus, let's say, intense?
Intense. Mhm.
Is you're going to have a lot of this sort of slamming down. Like, there's actions of like cacophony around you. It's not just that they are sort of exploding outward with their voice. They're exploding against furniture. They are
Mhm.
actively being somewhat violent in the space. They may not be hitting anyone, or they could
Mhm.
be, but they
Mhm.
might be hitting furniture or throwing shit around or slamming stuff down. There's a
Yeah.
aggressive way with which they're stomping and slamming doors and being really disruptive to convey how big the emotion is that they're
Yeah.
running.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, it's just you're putting everybody in a state of fear, and
Mhm.
fight or flight, and cortisol's running through their sweet little nervous systems. And you don't
It
want to
is
do that to
no
somebody you
bueno.
love.
Don't do that. It's not
Yeah.
nice.
Definitely
Especially
get some support, because that doesn't easily go away either. Like, that's something that needs to
no.
be processed out and needs to be healed up. And that
Yeah,
takes some professional insight.
it does. Yeah, get some guidance on for sure. And if you need help finding guidance, reach out. I definitely have lots of resources for that.
Yeah. Yep.
Guilting.
Guilting. Ooh, this one is subtle sometimes, not so subtle other times.
Guilt is such a especially around sexuality and intimacy and relationships, like it is a big trigger, big trigger. I think
Yeah.
because of our cultural influence and the religious influence on our culture. um Also, if one parent was more of a guilt tripper for you as a child, then you will probably attract partners who do that to you too.
I've seen
um
it, sister.
oh
I've
I
seen it over and over.
have been in it, yes, and it's
Today I'm Southern. Have you noticed? Am I doing this Southern
you
thing going on?
girl, you bring out your Southern girl any and old time you want, and you do it quite a lot, and I love it.
I do love my little inner Southern side. Yeah, I noticed that too. It
Speaking of
seems like
guilt,
it seems very dominant with women. The guilting
I think
gene,
it
like
goes for
guilting the
men too.
child.
I
You
think
think
it's
fathers do it a lot? Yes, I suppose fathers
I
do it
think it's
too.
pretty universal. I don't think it's gender specific. I think it's
Okay. Yeah, I
I
feel
mean,
like my
maybe it
father is
is
more guilty than
more
my
because
mom.
of the feminine being so overtly like, shamed around their bodies and their sexuality and all of that. But
But, like, dude, it's like the
this is
mother's like,
different.
"Oh, you didn't come and see me. I'm
Yeah,
important to
totally.
you anymore. What about
Yes.
this? What about that? Don't you
Uh-huh.
love me? You
Uh,
don't love no one ever pays
yeah.
attention to me.
Guilting
I
is
don't matter."
very different.
It's
Very
just on
different
and on
than
and on.
shaming. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that's
That
a
does not get you love. It's when you make somebody feel
oh
bad for
no.
not doing something for you, for not
No.
being thoughtful, for not remembering something that
Yeah.
I wasn't raised with a lot of that. I
You
mean, there
weren't.
was the whole stay a virgin thing, but
Mm.
that
Mhm.
summed it up.
Okay. Yeah. Well, if you
That
grew
was a
up
big one, but
with a
it's not ongoing.
religion in your
Yeah.
world, I grew up going to church every Sunday. I went to church. And I mean the guilt
But I
around
can't get
like
this.
being a certain way. There was just always so much pressure, especially I think growing up in Southern California for me, just so much pressure on you. You've got to be a certain way. You've got to look a certain way. You've got to eat certain food. Da, 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 da. I mean, there's a lot of guilt around food.
Right.
We self-guilt around
Totally.
food, instead of just
Yeah.
enjoying that gluten-free cookie that I ate this afternoon.
Yeah, yeah.
Was I sitting there with some guilt? I actually enjoyed it pretty good. But you have to overcome that guilt. You have to overcome that childhood sort of
Yeah, talk back to
ingrained
that guilt.
cultural yes. Like, get that little guilt monster inside of you and shake him up and say, "What do you really need? What do you really want?"
Well, I
What's
always think of,
underneath
like,
all
I
this?
always feel bad for people who are married and they have the worst in-laws. They're just like the
Mm.
guilt trip, and you feel like they don't make it seeing them enjoyable. And then they guilt you to high heaven because no one wants to hang out with you because you're always guilting everybody all the time.
Yeah.
Are critical and are picking at things. I have
Yeah.
the best in-laws.
Aw, I'm happy for
I
you,
want
love.
everyone to have good in-laws. To
Me
love their
too.
mother-in-law.
No,
I love
that's
my
such a good
mother-in-law. I
feeling.
love that my husband's a mama's boy.
Oh, I love
It's
that.
beautiful.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So also, like, be the good in-law you wish you had.
Yes.
Consider getting underneath that guilt tripper.
Yes. Kill him with kindness, as I say. So, with that, my friends, let us know how these 6 top saboteurs in relationship have affected you in your own life. Are they
Yeah.
affecting you currently? No shame in that. We're all in the middle of something here.
We all got
So,
some of this. Yeah. The 6 unhealthy relationship signs of going, "Hmm,
we want to hear
let's
from
make this
you.
better."
And if you have some great strategies to overcome them, like maybe you've had these in your past relationships, but you don't have them now, let us know that too, so we can share that with everyone else.
Yeah. Like, how did you overcome belittling, volatility, jealousy, and possessiveness? How did you overcome the guilting, the betrayal, the deflecting responsibility? How did you and your partner or your best friend or a family member resolve some of these heavy hitters? Because I think it's possible.
It's definitely possible. Definitely possible. And you have to believe that in order to make that so. What did I hear the other day? It was a great little adage. It was like, if you think it's going to be one way, it's going to be that way. And if you think it's going to be another way, it's going to be that way. So your beliefs and your thoughts are very powerful.
I was telling someone today about the appreciation piece. It's like, man, you're just sitting there. You're like, my life is so shitty. I'm suffering so
Yeah.
much. It's
Yes,
like,
yes.
yes, it's appreciating, darling. All of it's appreciating.
Appreciate all of it. The good, the
Mhm.
bad, the ugly, the
Yes.
beautiful. Appreciate all of it because you are the center of it. You co-created it with the universe. So look how fucking powerful you are.
Yeah. And you may not be able to change it today, but what you can do is probably look towards someone that you could cultivate, some friendship with, some trust, some safety with, so that you've got someone to talk to about it. And
And
then
hey,
you might be able to find another person who can help you make a step out of it.
absolutely. And you
So
know
small
what?
steps
Sometimes
forward.
this is not just like a mind over matter thing. You've got to check in with your body too. If you're under resourced in your body, if your hormones are out of balance, you're going to need support physically as well in order to overcome these saboteurs.
Yeah, but you're worth it. So we're here for you. Love,
We
love,
love
love.
you.
Thanks for tuning in. Leah Piper is a tantric sex master coach and a positive psychology facilitator. Dr. Willow Brown is both a Chinese and functional medicine doctor and a Taoist sexology teacher. Don't forget, your comments, likes, subscribes, and suggestions matter. Let's realize this new world together.